Nathan Reed stares in disbelief at the black woman standing before him, the CEO badge gleaming on her designer suit. His face, once smug with superiority, now drained of color. "My daughter's seat isn't just a seat, Mr. Reed. And this isn't just an airline. It's my airline." Before we dive into this incredible story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe if you want more stories about powerful moments when racism gets shut down. Now let's see what events led to this shocking confrontation. Zara Johnson settled into her first-class seat on Skyline Airways Flight SL-273, bound from Atlanta to San Francisco. At 16, she was used to traveling alone, but today felt different. Her hands fidgeted with the presentation notes for the National STEM competition, where she would showcase her revolutionary solar energy technology. The competition could change her life, offering a full scholarship to MIT and seed money to develop her invention. "Water, juice, or champagne?" asked Brianna Taylor, a flight attendant with a warm smile. "Just water, please," Zara replied, adjusting her glasses. Her mother had splurged on the first-class ticket, insisting Zara deserved comfort before her big presentation. What Zara didn't know was that her mother hadn't exactly splurged at all. Amara Johnson, Zara's mother, was not just a successful businesswoman. She was the owner of Skyline Airways, one of the fastest-growing airlines in the country. But Amara kept her ownership quiet, operating through holding companies and appearing publicly only as a board member. Experience had taught her that as a black woman, staying behind the scenes often meant fewer obstacles. She wanted her work to speak for itself before people saw her face. Zara had inherited her mother's brilliant mind and determination. Since age 12, she'd been developing a flexible solar panel that could increase energy absorption by 40% while cutting production costs in half. The technology could revolutionize accessibility to clean energy in lower-income communities, something Zara felt passionate about. The first-class cabin continued filling as Zara reviewed her notes. In seat 2A across the aisle, Dr. Elijah Brooks, a cardiothoracic surgeon returning from a medical conference, nodded politely at her. A few other passengers settled in, most buried in their phones or laptops. At the terminal, Nathan Reed checked his watch for the third time, annoyed at the boarding delay. At 45, Reed had built his reputation at Horizon Energy Solutions through aggressive tactics and an uncompromising demeanor. His company specialized in traditional energy resources, and he was traveling to San Francisco to scope out potential competition at the same STEM event Zara would be attending. Reed considered these student competitions little more than publicity stunts but recognized the value in identifying threats early. Final boarding call for Skyline Airways Flight SL-273 to San Francisco, the announcement blared. Reed muttered under his breath, grabbing his briefcase and striding toward the gate. "You're cutting it close, sir," the gate agent said as she scanned his boarding pass. "Delayed meetings," Reed replied curtly, not bothering with eye contact. "I need to make sure my usual seat is available." "Your assigned seat is 3C, sir. Have a pleasant flight." Reed walked down the jetway, his mind on the upcoming meetings in San Francisco. He had spent years cultivating his image as an industry titan, and his customary first-class experience was part of that persona. Though 3C wasn't his preferred seat, which was 2D, he expected the usual deference from the airline staff. On board, Brianna Taylor greeted him with a professional smile. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Reed." Reed nodded dismissively, making his way toward first class. He noticed several familiar faces from the business world, exchanging brief nods with those he deemed worthy of acknowledgement. As he approached row 2, he frowned. The seat he preferred, though not the one assigned to him, was occupied by a young black girl with textbooks spread across her tray table. He stopped, staring at Zara as if her presence in first class was an anomaly requiring explanation. Several thoughts crossed his mind, none of them considering that she belonged there legitimately. In Reed's worldview, certain spaces were implicitly reserved for people like him, and exceptions required justification. Zara felt his gaze but continued reviewing her notes. She had faced similar looks before and had learned from her mother how to maintain dignity in uncomfortable situations. Reed checked his boarding pass again, confirming his assigned seat was indeed 3C, not 2D where Zara sat. But logic and entitlement battled in his mind, with entitlement quickly gaining the upper hand. He had flown this route dozens of times, usually in 2D, and in his mind, that established a sort of ownership that superseded whatever was printed on his boarding pass today. Behind him, other passengers were boarding, creating a bottleneck as Reed stood in the aisle, glaring at Zara. Brianna approached, sensing trouble before it fully materialized. "Everything okay, sir? Can I help you find your seat?" Reed ignored her, his focus fixed on what he perceived as a problem that needed correction. Without realizing it, he was about to trigger a chain of events that would completely upend his sense of privilege and control. "Excuse me," Nathan Reed said, his voice carrying the assumption of authority. "I think you're in my seat." Zara looked up from her notes, momentarily confused. She double-checked her boarding pass. 2D. "That's what my ticket says." Reed's expression tightened. "There must be some mistake. I always sit in 2D when I fly this route." "I can check both of your boarding passes," Brianna offered, stepping forward to defuse the situation. "That won't be necessary," Reed said dismissively. "I'm a Platinum Sky Elite member. I fly this route twice monthly, always in seat 2D. Zara pulled out her boarding pass and held it up. "My ticket says 2D, sir. Maybe they assigned you a different seat this time." Reed didn't even glance at her boarding pass. Instead, he looked at Brianna. "Can you sort this out? I have calls to make before takeoff." Brianna took both boarding passes, confirming what was already clear. "Sir, your assigned seat today is 3C. Ms. Johnson has been assigned 2D correctly." "Johnson?" Reed's eyebrows raised slightly as if searching his mental database of important surnames and finding no match. "Look, there's clearly been a mistake. Perhaps she was upgraded accidentally." Several nearby passengers were now watching the interaction. Dr. Brooks lowered his medical journal, frowning at Reed's tone. "My seat was purchased as first class," Zara said quietly, maintaining her composure despite the growing discomfort of being the center of attention. Reed let out an exasperated sigh. "I find that hard to believe. This isn't just about the seat number. I need this specific seat for business purposes." He turned to Brianna again. "Surely you can arrange something. I've spent thousands with this airline." The implication hung in the air, unspoken but clear. How could this young black girl afford a first-class ticket legitimately? A white couple in their 50s across the aisle exchanged glances. "They should verify her ticket," the woman whispered, just loud enough to be heard. "People try to sneak into first class all the time." Zara's shoulders tensed, but her expression remained neutral. She'd been prepared for moments like this by her mother, who had experienced similar situations throughout her career. "Sir," Brianna said firmly, "Ms. Johnson's ticket is valid for seat 2D. Your assigned seat is 3C. I'd be happy to help you stow your luggage there." "This is unacceptable," Reed insisted, his voice rising. "I want to speak to your supervisor. I've never had this issue before." A middle-aged white man in row 1 nodded in agreement with Reed. "The airline should honor his status. He's clearly a valued customer." Dr. Brooks finally spoke up. "The young lady has her assigned seat. The gentleman should take his designated seat so we can depart on time." Reed shot him a cold look. "I don't recall asking for your input. And I don't recall an announcement that this flight was chartered exclusively for you," Dr. Brooks replied evenly. Brianna used her phone to call for backup as the situation escalated. "Sir, please take your assigned seat. We're scheduled to depart in 15 minutes. "Not until this is resolved properly," Reed insisted, still standing over Zara. "Do you know how much business I bring to this airline? I could be on United or Delta right now." Zara remained quiet, but she discreetly took out her phone and sent a text. "Mom, there's a situation on my flight. A man is making a scene about my seat in first class. Flight attendants handling it, but thought you should know. Flight SL 273. Reed noticed the text. "Who are you messaging? I hope you're not recording this. That would be inappropriate and possibly illegal." "I'm just letting my mother know about the delay," Zara answered truthfully. "Your mother?" Reed scoffed. "Maybe she can explain how you ended up with a first-class ticket." The comment hung in the air, loaded with assumptions and prejudice. A few passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others watched with the detached interest of people observing drama that didn't involve them. "Sir, I need you to take your seat now," Brianna insisted, her professional demeanor straining under Reed's continued defiance. "Not until I speak with someone in management," Reed demanded. "This is about principle. I've been a loyal customer for years." Brianna forced a smile. "I'll have my supervisor meet you at your assigned seat, sir. In 3C. Reed's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Being contradicted publicly wasn't something he experienced often, especially not by service personnel. "Do you know who I am?" he asked, lowering his voice to a threatening tone. "Yes, Mr. Reed. You're in seat 3C today," Brianna replied firmly. A few passengers chuckled, further inflaming Reed's temper. His status and authority were being challenged in front of an audience, and by people he considered beneath him in the social hierarchy. "This is exactly what's wrong with this country," he muttered, just loud enough to be heard. "No respect for loyal customers. No understanding of how things work." The coded language wasn't lost on Zara or Dr. Brooks, who exchanged knowing glances. They had heard versions of this before, the implication that certain people didn't understand how things work or didn't belong in premium spaces. Michael Davis, the head flight attendant, arrived at the growing disturbance. "What seems to be the problem here?" Reed immediately turned to Michael, perhaps hoping to find a more sympathetic ear. "Finally, someone who might understand. I need to sit in 2D, as I always do on this route. This girl is sitting there, and your colleague refuses to address the situation appropriately." Michael checked both boarding passes. "Sir, your assigned seat is 3C today. Ms. Johnson is correctly seated in 2D. "That's what I've been trying to explain," Brianna added. Reed's patience evaporated. "I want to call your corporate office. I know people there." "You're welcome to call after we land, sir," Michael replied calmly. "Right now, I need you to take your assigned seat so we can prepare for departure." "This is absurd," Reed declared, pulling out his phone. "I'm calling Robert Phillips right now. He's a VP at Skyline, and he'll sort this out." As Reed dialed, Zara's phone buzzed with a response from her mother, "On my way to the gate. Stay calm. Love you." "Robert Phillips isn't answering," Nathan Reed announced after his third attempt to reach his contact at the airline. His frustration was mounting visibly as he remained standing in the aisle, blocking other passengers and crew members. Michael Davis, the head flight attendant, had maintained his professional demeanor despite the growing tension. "Sir, regardless of who you know at the company, I need you to take your assigned seat immediately. We're holding up departure." "This is exactly why American businesses are failing," Reed declared loudly, looking around for supportive faces among the other first-class passengers. "No understanding of customer relationships. No respect for loyalty." In seat 2A, Dr. Elijah Brooks set down his medical journal and addressed Reed directly. "Sir, we all have places to be. Your insistence on disrupting this flight is disrespectful to everyone on board, including the young lady you're harassing." Reed turned sharply toward Dr. Brooks. "Harassing? I'm simply trying to get the seat I always have. How is that harassment? When you continue to pressure someone after being told repeatedly that you're in the wrong, that's harassment," Dr. Brooks replied calmly. "As a black man who flies frequently, I've seen this scenario play out too many times. You assume she doesn't belong here. Don't make this about race, Reed snapped, lowering his voice. This is about airline protocols and customer loyalty. From the back of first class, another voice joined in. Just take your seat, man. We're gonna miss our connections because of you. This came from a younger white man in business attire, clearly impatient with the delay. The pilot's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Williams. We're experiencing a slight delay due to a customer service issue. We should be underway shortly. Flight attendants, please stand by. Reed interpreted this announcement as validation. See? They recognize there's a legitimate issue here. Michael stepped closer to Reed, speaking quietly but firmly. Sir, I need to be very clear. You have two options: take your assigned seat in 3C, or I'll need to ask you to deplane, and we can rebook you on a later flight. This is outrageous, Reed sputtered. Do you have any idea how much business I bring to this airline? I could buy 100 first-class tickets with what my company spends on travel. Zara remained composed in her seat, though her knuckles had whitened as she gripped her tablet. The public spectacle was exactly what her mother had always taught her to avoid, yet here she was, center stage in a drama she hadn't created. Brianna leaned down to whisper to Zara. I'm so sorry about this. We're handling it. Zara nodded, appreciating the support but increasingly uncomfortable with the unwanted attention. Several passengers were now openly filming the confrontation on their phones, and Zara could only imagine how quickly this might spread on social media. Reed noticed the recording and pointed at a passenger. Put that phone away. You don't have my permission to film me. Actually, sir, we're in a public space, the passenger replied. And you're creating quite a public scene. Michael received a message through his earpiece and his expression changed subtly. Mr. Reed, I've just been informed that security has been called to the gate. This is your final opportunity to take your assigned seat before we have to ask you to leave the aircraft. Security? Reed's voice rose in indignation. For what? For expecting the service I've paid for. This is how you treat your most valuable customers. Sir, you're not being removed for requesting service. You're being removed for refusing to comply with crew member instructions, which is a federal violation. The atmosphere in the cabin had grown tense. Some passengers looked annoyed, others uncomfortable, and a few seemed almost entertained by the unfolding drama. I want to speak to whoever made the decision to call security, Reed demanded, pulling out his phone again. I'm documenting all of this. Your careers are on the line. Actually, sir, Michael replied with newfound confidence, I've just received word that a member of our executive team is on the way to address the situation personally. This news seemed to satisfy Reed temporarily. Finally, someone with actual authority. I'm sure they'll understand the importance of customer relationships. Dr. Brooks shook his head. The entitlement is astounding. Reed glared at him. Excuse me. You heard me, Dr. Brooks replied. You're holding up an entire aircraft because you think your status entitles you to take a seat from someone else. If the young lady were not black, would you have assumed she didn't belong in first class? The question hung in the air, causing several passengers to shift uncomfortably. That's ridiculous, Reed snapped, but his voice lacked conviction. This has nothing to do with. It has everything to do with it, Dr. Brooks interrupted. I've watched black passengers be questioned about their presence in first class too many times to count. I've experienced it myself, despite being a cardiac surgeon who flies weekly for consultations. Other passengers began murmuring, some nodding in agreement with Dr. Brooks, others looking away uncomfortably. You people always make everything about race, a white woman in her 60s commented from across the aisle. You people. Dr. Brooks repeated pointedly. Thank you for making my point so efficiently. Reed, sensing he was losing control of the narrative, changed tactics. Look, I simply expect consistency in my travel experience. Perhaps the young lady would be willing to accept compensation to switch seats. Zara finally spoke up. I paid for this seat, sir. I have a competition tomorrow that I need to be well rested for. I'm not interested in switching. What competition could possibly be so important? Reed asked dismissively. The National STEM Innovation Challenge, Zara replied. I'm presenting my solar energy technology. A flicker of recognition crossed Reed's face. As an executive at Horizon Energy, he was familiar with the competition. In fact, part of his trip to San Francisco was to scout potential threats to his company's market position. You're a competitor. His tone changed slightly, reassessing Zara. I'm a finalist, she corrected him. Before Reed could respond, a commotion at the front of the aircraft drew everyone's attention. The main cabin door had reopened, and someone was boarding. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the continued delay, the captain announced over the intercom. We should be ready to depart in approximately 5 minutes. Michael and Brianna exchanged glances, both having received messages through their earpieces. Something significant was happening, and Reed's expression showed he could sense the shift in dynamics. What's going on? He demanded. Who approved someone else boarding? Management has arrived to address your concerns personally, Mr. Reed, Michael replied, unable to completely hide a small smile. As you requested. 15 years earlier, Amara Johnson sat in yet another boardroom as the only black woman present, pitching her vision for airline industry innovation to a group of skeptical white male investors. Despite her Harvard MBA and proven track record in business transformation, she faced the same questions every time. How much experience do you actually have in aviation? Isn't this industry a bit technical for your background? Who would be the actual CEO if we funded this venture? The questions were thinly veiled expressions of doubt, not in her qualifications, but in her ability to lead as a black woman. After the 10th such meeting, Amara made a strategic decision that would change everything. She would become the investor rather than seeking investment. Have you ever wondered what it takes for someone to overcome systemic barriers and still rise to the top? Comment number 1 if you believe determination and brilliance can overcome prejudice, or number 2 if you think the system is still too stacked against minorities no matter their qualifications. Like this video if you've ever witnessed discrimination in professional settings, and subscribe to follow Amara's incredible journey to the top. How do you think her experiences shaped how she raised her daughter Zara? Let's find out. Using her savings and business acumen, Amara began purchasing small stakes in regional airlines, focusing on those with strong operational foundations but poor financial management. Over time, she consolidated these investments, implementing cutting-edge efficiency protocols that dramatically increased profitability. She worked primarily through investment groups and holding companies, letting white male executives serve as the public faces while she made the strategic decisions that transformed failing airlines into successful ones. 7 years ago, when Skyline Airways faced bankruptcy after mismanagement by its founding family, Amara made her boldest move. Through a complex series of transactions, she became the majority owner while maintaining a low profile, officially listed only as a board member and strategic consultant. The airline's remarkable turnaround was attributed to innovative management strategies and forward-thinking leadership, without most people knowing who was actually responsible. While building her business empire, Amara was also raising Zara as a single mother. From an early age, she instilled in her daughter both confidence and caution, the confidence to know her worth and the caution to recognize that others might not see it immediately. The world won't always make space for you, she would tell Zara. Sometimes you'll have to claim your space and be prepared to defend it. When 10-year-old Zara came home crying after a science teacher suggested she might be more comfortable taking home economics instead of joining the robotics team, Amara didn't just comfort her daughter. She taught her to document the discrimination, present her qualifications clearly, and stand firm in her right to opportunity. The next day, Zara returned to school with a letter articulating her interest in robotics and citing the school's non-discrimination policy. She joined the team and went on to lead it to a state championship. As Zara entered her teenage years, Amara watched her daughter navigate similar situations with increasing grace and resilience. When Zara's revolutionary solar panel design began winning local science competitions, Amara saw the same spark of innovation that had driven her own success. But she also saw the same obstacles forming, the questions about whether a young black girl could really have created such sophisticated technology, the suggestions that perhaps her male classmates had done the real work. Amara had deliberately kept her ownership of Skyline Airways private, believing that the company would be judged more objectively without her race and gender affecting perceptions. Only a handful of top executives knew the truth. She had planned to go public with her ownership once the airline had become too successful to be undermined by prejudice, but that timeline was about to be dramatically accelerated. In the boardroom at Skyline headquarters, Amara was midway through a quarterly performance review when her phone buzzed with Zara's text. Reading about Nathan Reed's behavior triggered something in Amara, a memory of all the times she had been asked to move, to step aside, to make herself smaller for someone else's comfort. "Excuse me," she said to the room full of executives, standing abruptly. "There's a situation on flight SL-273 that requires my immediate attention." Her CFO, Thomas Walters, looked confused. "We have people who handle customer service issues, Amara. This meeting is important." "Not as important as this," she replied, gathering her things. "My daughter is on that flight, and a passenger is harassing her about her seat in first class." Recognition dawned on Thomas's face. He was one of the few who knew both her ownership stake and her private policy of never using her position for personal benefit. If she was intervening now, the situation must be serious. "Do you want me to call ahead?" he asked. Amara paused at the door. "No. I think it's time for a more direct approach. Have my car brought around." As she rode to the airport, Amara reflected on the decision she was about to make. For years, she had kept her role quiet, letting her work speak for itself without the complications of being seen as the black female airline owner. But perhaps that anonymity, while protective, was also part of the problem. Perhaps it was time to be visible, to show Zara and everyone else that claiming your space sometimes meant letting people know exactly who you are. The car pulled up to the executive entrance of the airport. The station manager, alerted by Thomas despite Amara's instructions, was waiting to escort her directly to the gate where flight SL-273 was still parked, its departure now significantly delayed. "We've been informed of the situation, Ms. Johnson," the manager said nervously. "Security is standing by, but we didn't want to act without your guidance." "The passenger's name?" Amara asked as they walked briskly through the terminal. "Nathan Reed. He's a Platinum Sky Elite member, flies with us frequently. He's an executive with Horizon Energy Solutions." Amara almost laughed at the coincidence. Horizon was one of the companies that had dismissed her investment proposals years earlier, suggesting that perhaps she didn't understand the energy market well enough. "And what exactly is Mr. Reed's issue with my daughter's seating arrangement?" "He insists on having seat 2D, though he's assigned to 3C today. He's claiming that as a frequent flyer, he should be given priority. He's been quite disruptive." "Has he now?" Amara's voice was calm, but her eyes flashed with determination. "Then I believe it's time Mr. Reed and I had a conversation about customer service and respect." As they approached the gate, Amara removed her casual blazer and replaced it with the formal jacket of her designer suit, complete with the CEO pin she rarely wore in public. She checked her reflection in a window, straightened her posture, and nodded to the gate agent. "Please inform the flight crew that the owner of Skyline Airways is boarding." The first-class cabin fell silent as Amara Johnson stepped on board, her presence commanding immediate attention. She wore a tailored navy suit that screamed executive authority, a stark contrast to Nathan Reed's rumpled business attire after his prolonged standoff in the aisle. Brianna straightened immediately, recognizing Amara despite her rare appearances at staff functions. "Ms. Johnson, we weren't expecting." "It's quite all right, Brianna," Amara said with a warm smile. I understand there's a customer service issue that requires attention. Nathan Reed, still standing in the aisle, assessed the newcomer with obvious confusion. Her authoritative demeanor suggested importance, but as a black woman, he automatically categorized her as someone of limited power in his mental hierarchy. Finally, he said, assuming she was perhaps a customer service manager. Someone who might understand the situation properly. Are you in charge here? You could say that, Amara replied evenly. I understand you have concerns about your seating arrangement, Mr. Reed. Reed launched into his complaint, his tone condescending. I fly this route twice monthly, always in seat 2D. It's my preferred seat for business purposes. Today I find it occupied, and the staff have been unhelpful in resolving the situation. I see, Amara said, her voice measured as she glanced toward Zara, who watched the interaction with wide eyes. And the current occupant of 2D has a valid ticket for that seat, correct? Technically yes, but... So your complaint is not that she's seated somewhere she shouldn't be, but rather that you aren't seated where you prefer to be, despite having a ticket for a different seat altogether? Reed frowned, not appreciating having his position distilled so clinically. It's about customer loyalty. I've flown over 100,000 miles with Skyline this year alone. Surely that counts for something. Amara nodded thoughtfully. Customer loyalty is indeed important to us at Skyline Airways. As is treating all passengers with respect. Exactly my point, Reed said, mistaking her comment for agreement. I feel I'm not being respected as a loyal customer. And how do you think the young woman you've been demanding give up her legitimate seat feels? Has she been treated with respect? Reed bristled. This isn't about her. This is about proper protocols for valued customers. On the contrary, Mr. Reed, Amara replied, her voice taking on a sharper edge. This is very much about her. That young woman you've been harassing for the past 20 minutes is my daughter. A murmur rippled through the first-class cabin. Reed's expression faltered briefly before he regained his composure. Your daughter? Then you should understand the importance of teaching young people about how the world works. Sometimes we make accommodations for those who've earned certain privileges through loyalty and business relationships. Amara's smile remained fixed, but her eyes hardened. I've taught my daughter many things, Mr. Reed. The importance of dignity. The value of standing her ground when she's in the right. And yes, how the world works, including how people like you expect people like us to step aside, even when we have every right to be exactly where we are. Reed sensed he was losing control of the situation but pressed on. I think you're mischaracterizing my position. This isn't about anything other than customer service. Let me ask you something, Mr. Reed, Amara continued, taking a step closer. When you first saw my daughter in seat 2D, what was your immediate assumption? That there had been a mistake. That she couldn't possibly belong in first class. Reed's silence was telling. Would you have made the same assumption if she had been a young white man in a business suit? Amara pressed. Several passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, the question hanging in the air like a live wire. This is absurd, Reed finally sputtered. You're turning a simple customer service issue into something it's not. Dr. Brooks spoke up from his seat. Actually, sir, she's identifying exactly what it is. I watched you dismiss the young lady's valid boarding pass without even looking at it. I watched you assume she didn't belong here. As a black professional who experiences the same assumptions regularly, I recognized it immediately. Reed looked around the cabin, realizing he was losing whatever support he might have had among the other passengers. Look, this has gotten out of hand. I was simply trying to maintain my usual travel routine. At my daughter's expense, Amara noted. And now at the expense of everyone on this flight, which has been delayed because of your refusal to accept that you aren't entitled to take a seat that belongs to someone else. Reed tried a new approach. I apologize if there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we could discuss this privately. I believe my company, Horizon Energy, actually has some pending business proposals with Skyline's parent company. Amara's eyebrows raised slightly. Are you attempting to use your business connection as leverage in this situation, Mr. Reed? Not at all, he backpedaled quickly. I'm simply pointing out that we should be able to resolve this professionally, as business associates. I'm very familiar with Horizon Energy, Amara said, her voice taking on a new tone that made several crew members exchange knowing glances. In fact, I reviewed your company's partnership proposal personally just last week. Confusion crossed Reed's face. You reviewed our proposal? What's your position exactly? Amara straightened the CEO pin on her lapel, making sure it caught the light. I'm Amara Johnson, Mr. Reed. I don't just work for Skyline Airways. I own it. The silence that followed was absolute. Reed stared at Amara, his expression cycling rapidly through disbelief, shock, and the dawning horror of recognition. That's not possible, he finally managed. Robert Phillips is the CEO. I know him personally. Robert reports to me, Amara replied simply. He's an excellent operations executive, but I make the final decisions. Including decisions about which companies Skyline partners with, and which passengers are welcome on our aircraft. The implication wasn't lost on Reed, whose face had now drained of color. Ms. Johnson, I think there's been a significant misunderstanding. I had no idea. Clearly, Amara cut him off. You had no idea that the young black woman you were trying to displace was my daughter. You had no idea that the airline you've been threatening staff members about is my company. The question is, would it have made a difference if you had known? Would you have treated my daughter with respect if you'd known her mother had power over you, or would you still have assumed she didn't belong in first class? Reed had no answer. My daughter's seat isn't just a seat, Mr. Reed. And this isn't just an airline. It's my airline. The cabin remained silent as the gravity of the situation settled over everyone present. Reed stood frozen, his customary confidence shattered by the public dismantling of his assumptions and authority. Now, Amara continued, her voice returning to its professional cadence, you have two options. You can take your assigned seat in 3C so this flight can depart, or you can exit the aircraft and we'll rebook you on another airline entirely. The choice is yours, but it needs to be made in the next 30 seconds. Reed swallowed hard, looking from Amara to Zara, who sat watching the scene unfold with a mixture of awe and vindication. I'll take 3C, he said quietly. A wise decision, Amara replied. She turned to Michael. Please ensure Mr. Reed is settled in his assigned seat so we can get this flight underway. The passengers have been delayed long enough. As Reed moved toward 3C with Michael's assistance, Amara approached Zara's seat and leaned down to embrace her daughter. You okay, sweetheart? She asked softly. Zara nodded, her eyes shining with admiration. I'm fine, Mom. That was incredible. That was necessary, Amara replied. Sometimes you have to stand your ground, even when it's uncomfortable. She straightened up and addressed the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay to your journey today. We'll be getting you on your way to San Francisco momentarily. As a token of our appreciation for your patience, everyone on board will receive a travel voucher for a future flight. As Amara moved to exit the aircraft, Dr. Brooks caught her eye and gave her a respectful nod of acknowledgement. She returned the gesture with a small smile, a moment of silent understanding passing between them. Before departing, Amara paused by Reed's new seat in 3C. Mr. Reed, regarding that partnership proposal from Horizon Energy? I'll be reviewing it again with today's interaction in mind. I suggest you use this flight time to reflect on the kind of business relationship Skyline Airways values, those based on mutual respect and dignity for all. With that parting statement, Amara exited the aircraft, leaving Nathan Reed to face the remainder of the flight surrounded by passengers and crew who had witnessed his humiliation and the powerful lesson in consequences that had just unfolded. Amara Johnson hadn't planned to board Flight SL-273 herself, but as she stood at the gate watching the door close, a thought occurred to her. This moment represented everything she had been working toward, not just as a business leader but as a mother. Instead of returning to her boardroom, she made a split-second decision. "Hold the door, please," she called to the gate agent. "I'll be joining this flight." Minutes later, Amara settled into seat 1A, directly in front of her daughter. The message to the other passengers was clear: the owner of the airline wasn't just making a brief appearance to handle a situation, she was claiming her space permanently. Zara leaned forward. "Mom, are you really flying to San Francisco?" "I wouldn't miss your presentation tomorrow for anything," Amara replied with a warm smile. "Besides, I think this flight just became a pivotal moment for Skyline Airways." In seat 3C, Nathan Reed sat rigidly, attempting to appear absorbed in his laptop while acutely aware of the sideways glances from other passengers. His carefully constructed image of authority had been publicly shattered, and the ramifications extended far beyond this flight. As the aircraft reached cruising altitude, Brianna approached Amara with exceptional attentiveness. "Ms. Johnson, can I get you anything?" "Just water, thank you, Brianna," Amara replied. "And please, the crew should continue their normal service. I'm just another passenger today." This wasn't entirely true, of course. Amara's presence had transformed the atmosphere in the cabin. Crew members moved with an extra measure of professionalism, and passengers sat a little straighter, curious about the woman who had so thoroughly upended their expectations. Dr. Brooks, seated across from Amara, introduced himself properly. "Dr. Elijah Brooks, cardiothoracic surgeon. What you did back there was long overdue in this industry." "Amara Johnson," she replied, shaking his hand. "And thank you for speaking up for my daughter before I arrived. Too often, people witness these situations and remain silent." "I've been on both sides," Dr. Brooks acknowledged. "Sometimes as the target, sometimes as the bystander. I've learned that silence only empowers those who rely on it." Their conversation was interrupted when, to everyone's surprise, Nathan Reed rose from his seat and approached Amara. The cabin grew quiet, passengers anticipating another confrontation. Reed cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Ms. Johnson, I want to apologize for my behavior earlier. It was inappropriate." Amara studied him carefully. "Which part exactly are you apologizing for, Mr. Reed?" The directness of her question caught him off guard. The disruption to the flight, of course. Not the assumptions you made about my daughter. Not the way you dismissed her right to be where she belonged." Reed shifted his weight uncomfortably. "I didn't mean to." "Intent and impact are different things, Mr. Reed," Amara interrupted calmly. "You may not have intended to display racial bias, but your actions did exactly that." Several passengers were now openly watching the exchange. Reed lowered his voice. "Ms. Johnson, I'd prefer to discuss this privately. There's the matter of our company's potential partnership to consider." "I don't separate my business ethics from my personal ones," Amara replied, maintaining a professional tone. "And I don't conduct business with individuals or companies that don't align with Skyline's values of respect and inclusion." The implication was clear. Reed's behavior had potentially cost his company millions in business opportunities. Surely one misunderstanding shouldn't. "It wasn't a misunderstanding," Amara corrected him. "It was a revealing moment. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to spend this flight catching up with my daughter before her big presentation tomorrow." Dismissed, Reed returned to his seat, the weight of consequences settling heavily on his shoulders. As he retreated, Dr. Brooks gave a subtle nod of approval. "That man's probably never had to face real consequences for his behavior before today." "The world is changing," Amara replied. "Slowly, but it is changing." She turned her attention to Zara, who had been watching the interaction with fascination. Amara moved to the empty seat beside her daughter. "So, tell me more about your presentation tomorrow," she said, shifting the focus back to what truly mattered. "Are you nervous?" Zara shook her head, a new confidence evident in her posture. "Not anymore. After watching you stand your ground, how could I be?" As the flight progressed, something remarkable happened throughout the cabin. Passengers began approaching Amara and Zara during breaks in service, sharing their own stories of discrimination faced in travel, in business, in everyday life. A young Hispanic woman confided that she'd been asked if she was in the right line when queuing for first class. An older Asian man described being repeatedly mistaken for cabin crew rather than a business class passenger. Each story reinforced what Amara had always known: her experience wasn't unique, but her position to do something about it was. Midway through the flight, Brianna approached with a message. "Ms. Johnson, we've been receiving calls from headquarters. Apparently, there are already social media posts about what happened at the gate. The PR team is asking for guidance." Amara considered this development. For years, she had maintained a low profile, believing it served her business interests better. But perhaps visibility had its own power. Tell them to prepare a simple statement, she decided. Skyline Airways is committed to ensuring all passengers are treated with dignity and respect. We do not tolerate discrimination of any kind, regardless of a customer's loyalty status or business relationships. Should we mention that you're the owner? Brianna asked. Amara smiled. Yes. I think it's time people knew exactly who owns Skyline Airways. As the message was relayed to headquarters, Amara reflected on the impact of this day's events. What had begun as a typical instance of racial profiling had transformed into a defining moment for her company, her daughter, and herself. In Seat 3C, Nathan Reed was on his phone, urgently texting his colleagues at Horizon Energy. The partnership with Skyline had been projected to increase their market share significantly. Now that opportunity was in jeopardy because of his behavior. Worse, if word got out about how he'd conducted himself, his position within his own company could be at risk. The remainder of the flight passed without incident, but the atmosphere had been permanently altered. As they began their descent into San Francisco, Amara noticed Reed making one final attempt to salvage his reputation. He approached their seats again, this time with a carefully rehearsed expression of contrition. Ms. Johnson, before we land, I wanted to extend a more sincere apology. Today has been educational. I realize my behavior reflected poorly on myself and my company. Amara regarded him thoughtfully. Apologies are meaningful when they demonstrate understanding, Mr. Reed. What exactly have you learned today? The question forced him to confront the substance behind his words. That, assumptions based on appearance are inappropriate and harmful. That's a start, Amara acknowledged. Though I suspect what you've really learned is that the people you dismiss today might be the ones with power over your interests tomorrow. Reed had no response to this uncomfortably accurate assessment. Your partnership proposal will receive the same objective evaluation as any other, Amara continued professionally. But I suggest Horizon Energy might benefit from examining its corporate culture and inclusion practices before our next review. As the aircraft touched down in San Francisco, passengers began gathering their belongings, but the usual rush to disembark was tempered by the unique experience they had shared. Many nodded respectfully to Amara and Zara as they passed, some even stopping to offer words of support or appreciation. Standing in the aisle, Dr. Brooks extended his business card to Zara. When you finish revolutionizing solar energy, give me a call. The medical technology field could use minds like yours. As they finally stepped off the aircraft, Brianna thanked Amara quietly. What you did today means more than you know. For all of us who have to smile through situations like that every day. Amara squeezed her hand in understanding. From now on, Skyline Airways will be different. I promise you that. In the terminal, as mother and daughter walked toward baggage claim, Zara looked at Amara with new eyes. She had always known her mother was successful, but today she had witnessed firsthand the power of owning your space unapologetically. Mom, she said thoughtfully, all those years you kept your ownership quiet, was it worth it? Amara considered the question carefully. It served its purpose at the time. Sometimes you have to work within the system to change it. But today. She smiled, looking back at the gate where their journey had taken an unexpected turn. Today felt like the right moment to step into the light. Behind them, Nathan Reed exited the jetway alone, his phone buzzing continuously with messages from his increasingly concerned colleagues. The world as he knew it had shifted beneath his feet, and he was only beginning to understand how dramatically one encounter could change everything. The morning after their arrival in San Francisco, Amara Johnson sat in the hotel suite's living area, watching news coverage of the previous day's incident on her tablet. What had begun as a few social media posts had exploded overnight into a full-blown viral story. Hashtag Skyline Showdown and hashtag My Mother's Airline were trending across platforms. "Mom, you need to see this," Zara called from her room. Horizon Energy just released a statement. Amara joined her daughter, reading the press release displayed on Zara's laptop. Horizon Energy Solutions is aware of an incident involving one of our executives on a Skyline Airways flight yesterday. The reported behavior does not reflect our company's values of respect and inclusion. We have placed the executive in question on administrative leave pending a full investigation. We extend our sincere apologies to all affected and reaffirm our commitment to fostering a diverse and respectful corporate culture. That was fast, Amara remarked, unsurprised but satisfied. Corporate damage control moves quickly when millions are at stake. Zara looked up at her mother. "Do you think they're serious about the investigation, or just trying to save the partnership with Skyline?" "Both, probably," Amara replied honestly. "But intentions matter less than outcomes sometimes. If this pushes them toward actual accountability, I'll count that as progress." Their conversation was interrupted by Amara's phone ringing. It was Thomas, her CFO. "Amara, have you seen the numbers this morning?" he asked without preamble. "No, I've been focused on Zara's presentation." "What's happening?" "Our stock is up 12% since market open. Skyline is being celebrated across social media as a company that stands against discrimination. The video clips of you confronting Reed have been viewed millions of times. People are literally changing their travel plans to fly with us." Amara took a moment to process this. For years, conventional wisdom in the business world had warned that taking strong public stances on social issues was risky. Yet here was concrete evidence to the contrary. "That's unexpected," she admitted. "But what about the corporate accounts? Any pushback from Reed's business allies?" Thomas chuckled. "Two companies called to express concerns. Meanwhile, 15 new corporate clients have reached out specifically asking to establish travel contracts with us. It turns out, diverse leadership is actually good for business." After finishing the call, Amara shared the update with Zara, who was preparing her presentation materials for the competition. "So standing up against racism is actually profitable?" Zara asked skeptically. "That doesn't seem right somehow." Amara sat beside her daughter. "It's complicated. For too long, businesses have operated under the assumption that addressing discrimination would alienate customers. What we're seeing is that many people, across races and backgrounds, actually value accountability and fairness. But what about the people who don't? The ones who think like Reed? They've always been a vocal minority," Amara explained. "The problem is that businesses have historically catered to them out of fear. But when companies actually take principled stands, they often find support from the much larger group of people who believe in equality and respect." Zara considered this as she organized her notes. "Is that why you decided to go public about owning Skyline? Because you realized it might actually help the business rather than hurt it?" "Partly," Amara admitted. "But mostly because of you. Watching Reed try to displace you made me realize that by staying in the shadows, I was perpetuating the very system I claimed to be fighting against. If I truly want a world where you don't face those assumptions, I need to be visible in my success." At the Horizon Energy offices in San Francisco, Nathan Reed arrived to find his access card deactivated. Security escorted him to a conference room where the company's chief operations officer, Patricia Winters, waited with the head of human resources. "Nathan, you've put us in an extremely difficult position," Patricia began without preamble. "The videos are everywhere. Your behavior directly contradicts our public commitments to diversity and inclusion. It's being blown out of proportion, Reed protested weakly. I was simply trying to get the seat I usually have. By harassing a teenage girl? By making racially charged comments? The HR director slid several printed social media posts across the table. These are direct quotes from witnesses. Reed's face flushed as he read the damning accounts. I never mentioned race. You didn't have to. Your assumptions were clear in your actions. Patricia sighed heavily. Do you have any idea how much damage you've done? We've had 3 potential clients cancel meetings today alone. The Skyline partnership, which you were supposed to be developing, is almost certainly dead. And all because you couldn't accept sitting in 3C instead of 2D. The absurdity of it, laid bare in those terms, finally seemed to penetrate Reed's defenses. What happens now? You're on administrative leave while we investigate. But Nathan, Patricia leaned forward, I'll be blunt. Your position here is extremely precarious. We're already facing calls for your termination from employees and clients alike. As Reed was escorted from the building, his phone buzzed with a text from Robert Phillips, his contact at Skyline Airways. Just learned what happened. Can't help you on this one. For what it's worth, we all knew Amara was the real boss. Should have warned you. Back at the hotel, Amara received another call, this time from Michael Davis, the head flight attendant who had witnessed the confrontation. MS. Johnson, I hope I'm not overstepping, but the crew wanted me to reach out. After yesterday, several of us have been talking. We've experienced similar situations before but never had the authority to address them properly. We're wondering if Skyline might consider implementing new training and protocols for handling discrimination on our flights. Amara's response was immediate. Not overstepping at all, Michael. In fact, I'd like you to lead a task force on developing those very protocols. Who better than the frontline staff who deal with these situations daily? When she ended the call, Amara found Zara watching her with admiration. You're really going all in on this, aren't you? It's long overdue, Amara replied. For years, I convinced myself that quiet influence was the most effective approach. Now I'm seeing the power of visible leadership. Later that afternoon, as they prepared to leave for Zara's competition, Brianna Taylor, the flight attendant from their flight, called Amara with surprising news. Ms. Johnson, I thought you should know. Dr. Brooks, the surgeon who stood up for Zara on the flight. He's organized a group of frequent business travelers who are publicly moving their loyalty to Skyline Airways. They're calling themselves Allies in the Air and pledging to support airlines with diverse leadership and strong anti-discrimination policies. The ripple effects continued throughout the day. By evening, as Zara nervously waited backstage at the STEM competition, #MyMother'sAirline had evolved from a hashtag into a movement, with people sharing their own stories of standing up against discrimination in professional spaces. Amara sat in the audience, watching as her daughter took the stage to present her solar technology. In the front row, where competition sponsors and industry leaders were seated, a conspicuously empty chair marked the spot where Nathan Reed would have been representing Horizon Energy. As Zara confidently explained how her flexible solar panels could transform energy access for underserved communities, Amara reflected on how one incident on an airplane had catalyzed changes she had been working toward for years. Her phone buzzed with a message from Thomas, "Board wants to issue formal announcement of your position as owner and CEO. Time to make it official." Amara typed back a single word, "Yes." In that moment, as she watched her daughter shine on stage, Amara Johnson embraced the full scope of her influence and responsibility. The incident with Reed hadn't just been about one man's prejudice or one girl's right to a seat. It had become a catalyst for transformation, both personal and professional. And somewhere in San Francisco, Nathan Reed was learning the hardest lesson of his career, that the world was changing, with or without his acceptance, and the price of resisting that change had just become unbearably high. 1 week after the incident on Flight SL-273, Zara Johnson stood on stage at the National STEM Innovation Challenge, accepting the grand prize for her revolutionary solar panel technology. The judges had been unanimous in their decision, praising not only the technical innovation but also her vision for making renewable energy accessible to underserved communities. "This technology doesn't just represent a scientific advancement," Zara said during her acceptance speech. "It represents a commitment to ensuring everyone has access to clean energy, regardless of economic status or geographic location. Sometimes, claiming your rightful place means creating space for others as well." The audience, unaware of the double meaning in her words, applauded enthusiastically. But in the front row, Amara Johnson recognized her daughter's subtle reference to their shared experience the week before. After the ceremony, as attendees mingled during the reception, Zara was approached by Dr. Elijah Brooks, who had flown in specifically to support her. "That was remarkable," he said, shaking her hand. "When I mentioned on the flight that medical technology could use minds like yours, I wasn't exaggerating. Have you considered applications for your flexible panels and portable medical devices?" "Actually, yes," Zara replied enthusiastically. "One of my design iterations included biocompatible materials that could potentially power implantable devices." As they discussed potential collaborations, Amara found herself approached by Patricia Winters from Horizon Energy. "Ms. Johnson," Patricia began, "I want to personally apologize for Mr. Reed's behavior last week. His actions in no way reflect our company's values. Yet they reflected your company's culture enough that he felt comfortable displaying those attitudes publicly," Amara replied evenly. Patricia nodded, accepting the rebuke. "That's a fair assessment, and precisely why I'm here. Reed has been terminated, effective immediately. But we recognize that removing one individual doesn't address the underlying issues. We're implementing comprehensive changes to our corporate culture and diversity policies." "I'm glad to hear it," Amara said. "Meaningful change requires more than press releases and symbolic gestures." "Absolutely," Patricia agreed. "Which brings me to my second reason for being here. We were hoping to discuss salvaging the partnership between our companies, with some significant modifications to the original proposal." "I'm listening," Amara said, maintaining her professional demeanor despite the satisfaction she felt. Patricia outlined a revised partnership that included not only the original business arrangements but also a substantial commitment to funding scholarships for minority students in STEM fields and a joint initiative to bring renewable energy solutions to underserved communities. "Impressive pivot," Amara acknowledged. "I'll have my team review the new proposal. But Patricia, understand this, accountability will be built into any agreement we make. Demonstrable progress on diversity and inclusion will be required for the partnership to continue." "We wouldn't expect anything less," Patricia replied. "Reed's behavior was a wake-up call for our entire executive team. Sometimes it takes a public reckoning to force meaningful change." Across the room, Brianna Taylor and Michael Davis had also come to support Zara, having requested special leave to attend. Since the incident, both had been working closely with Skyline's executive team to develop new training protocols for flight crews facing discrimination situations. "The response from staff has been overwhelming," Michael told Amara when she joined their conversation. "People are sharing experiences they've kept quiet for years, knowing that finally, someone is actually listening." Brianna nodded in agreement. "The difference is night and day. Before, we were told to de-escalate situations, which often meant appeasing the person causing the problem. Now we're being empowered to uphold our values, even when it's uncomfortable." "That's exactly the shift we need," Amara said. "Comfort has too often been prioritized over justice." "Speaking of which, how are passengers responding to our new policies?" "There was some pushback from a few elite status members," Michael admitted. "But the vast majority have been supportive. In fact, our customer satisfaction scores are up across all demographics." Later that evening, back in their hotel suite, Amara and Zara reviewed the day's events. The competition trophy sat on the coffee table between them, a tangible symbol of achievement and recognition. "So, Dr. Brooks wants to collaborate on medical applications for your technology," Amara asked, clearly impressed. Yes, Zara confirmed. He says Baptist Memorial Hospital would be interested in funding a pilot project. Can you believe it, Mom? A week ago, I was just hoping to place in the competition. Now I have potential investors and collaborators. Amara smiled, recognizing the familiar trajectory of opportunity expanding exponentially once initial barriers were broken. That's how it works, sweetheart. Once you get your foot in the door, your talent speaks for itself. The hardest part is often just getting people to open the door in the first place. Like you did with Skyline, Zara observed. Speaking of which, have you seen this? She turned her laptop to show her mother the latest news coverage. Skyline Airways had just been featured in a major business publication under the headline, "The Airline Industry's Best-Kept Secret, How Amara Johnson Built a Corporate Empire While Fighting Discrimination." The article detailed Amara's journey from being dismissed by investors to quietly becoming one of the most successful black female executives in America. It praised her decision to finally step into the public eye and highlighted the positive market response to her leadership. "They're calling you a stealth revolutionary," Zara said with a grin. "Pretty cool mom status." Amara laughed, but her expression quickly turned thoughtful. "You know, for years I believed staying behind the scenes was strategic. I told myself it was about business, not personal recognition. But looking back, I wonder how much of that was internalized doubt, the fear that being visibly black and female at the helm might somehow diminish what I'd built." "And now?" Zara asked. "Now I realize that visibility itself is revolutionary. When people like us occupy spaces of power openly, we change what others believe is possible." Their conversation was interrupted by Amara's phone ringing. It was Thomas again, this time with news that a major national morning show wanted to interview both Amara and Zara about their respective achievements and the now famous airplane confrontation. "They want to feature us together?" Zara asked, surprised when her mother shared the request. "Apparently, the combination of my corporate revelation and your STEM victory has struck a chord," Amara explained. "People are connecting the dots between individual instances of discrimination and systemic barriers. Our story offers both the problem and potential solutions." After discussing it, they decided to accept the interview request, recognizing the opportunity to further the conversation about representation in both business and STEM fields. That night, as Zara slept soundly after her triumphant day, Amara sat awake, reflecting on the unexpected journey of the past week. What had begun as a typical instance of discrimination, the kind she and her daughter had faced countless times before, had transformed into a catalyst for change far beyond anything she could have anticipated. She opened her laptop and began drafting what would become Skyline Airways' new mission statement, centered on a commitment to dignity and respect for all passengers and employees. The final line read, "We believe everyone deserves their seat at the table, or on the plane, and we will continue to stand firmly in defense of that principle." As she finally prepared for bed, Amara thought about Nathan Reed, wondering if he understood yet how profoundly one moment of entitlement had altered the trajectory of multiple lives, including his own. Some lessons came at a higher cost than others, but perhaps that was what made them impossible to forget. 6 months after the incident on Flight SL-273, Amara Johnson stood at the podium in Skyline Airways corporate headquarters, addressing a room full of new flight attendants during their training orientation. Behind her, a large screen displayed the company's updated value statement, with "dignity and respect" prominently featured at the top. "What happened on that flight last February has become a case study in how we handle discrimination," Amara explained to the attentive group. "But more importantly, it's become a template for how we empower our staff to uphold our values, even in challenging situations." In the front row, Breanna Taylor and Michael Davis nodded in agreement. Both had received promotions in the months following the incident, Breanna to Senior Cabin Services Trainer and Michael to Director of Customer Experience. Their contributions to Skyline's new anti-discrimination protocols had transformed how the airline addressed conflicts involving bias and prejudice. "Today, I want to introduce someone who can speak personally about why these policies matter," Amara continued. "My daughter, Zara, who was at the center of that pivotal moment. Zara, now 17 and considerably more confident in public speaking, joined her mother at the podium. Her solar technology had garnered significant attention since winning the STEM competition, with development now being funded by a consortium of investors committed to renewable energy access. Before that day on the plane, I always tried to avoid confrontation when people questioned my belonging in certain spaces, Zara told the trainees. I thought keeping my head down was the mature response. What I've learned since then is that sometimes standing your ground isn't just about yourself, it's about everyone who comes after you. After the training session, as Amara and Zara walked through the corporate offices, employees greeted them with a respect tinged with something else, a sense of shared purpose that had permeated the company culture since Amara had stepped fully into her role as the public face of Skyline Airways. Ms. Johnson, a young assistant called, hurrying to catch up with them. The final numbers for the scholarship program just came in. We've funded 50 full rides for minority students entering aviation and STEM fields this fall. The Zara Johnson Scholarship for Innovation had been established using profits from Skyline's record-breaking quarter following the viral incident. The company's stock had continued to perform exceptionally well, with industry analysts attributing the success to increased consumer confidence in leadership that demonstrated clear values. That's wonderful news, Amara replied. Make sure the announcement emphasizes that recipients will also be guaranteed internship opportunities with our partner companies. Those partner companies now notably did not include Horizon Energy Solutions. Despite Patricia Winter's efforts to salvage the relationship, due diligence had revealed deeper cultural issues within Horizon that Amara was unwilling to overlook. Instead, Skyline had formed strategic partnerships with several smaller, more progressive energy companies, including one developing commercial applications for Zara's solar technology. Mom, we're going to be late for the interview, Zara reminded her, checking the time. They were scheduled to appear on a national talk show that afternoon, their third major media appearance since February. What had initially been coverage of the viral confrontation had evolved into ongoing interest in both Amara's business leadership and Zara's technological innovations. As they headed toward the car, Amara's phone buzzed with a news alert. She stopped walking, her expression shifting as she read the headline. What is it? Zara asked. Nathan Reed just announced his new position, Amara said, showing her the screen. He's been hired as a diversity and inclusion consultant for a corporate training firm. They both stared at the announcement in disbelief. You have got to be kidding me, Zara finally said. The man who tried to displace me because he assumed I didn't belong in first class is now teaching others about inclusion. Amara shook her head, though not entirely in disagreement. Redemption arcs take many forms. According to this, he's been speaking openly about how his confrontation with us transformed his understanding of privilege and bias. Do you believe it's genuine? Zara asked skeptically. I believe consequences can be powerful teachers, Amara replied thoughtfully. Whether his transformation is motivated by genuine enlightenment or professional survival doesn't change the impact of his new message. During the car ride to the television studio, they discussed how dramatically their lives had changed in just 6 months. Zara's invention was moving toward commercial development, with pilot programs planned for several low-income communities in the Southwest. Amara had become one of the most recognizable black female executives in America, frequently speaking at business conferences about transparent leadership and corporate responsibility. At the studio, they were escorted to makeup and then to a green room to wait for their segment. The show's producer briefed them on the interview topics. We'd like to start with the incident itself, then move to how it's affected both of your careers, and finally discuss the scholarship program and solar energy initiative, she explained. Is there anything specific you'd like to highlight? Yes, Amara said decisively. I'd like to emphasize that what happened to Zara wasn't exceptional, it was simply exceptional that there were consequences. Black women and girls face these assumptions daily, usually without the power to address them so effectively. The producer nodded, making notes. That's powerful. It helps contextualize your individual story within the broader social landscape. When they finally took their seats under the bright studio lights, the host greeted them warmly. Amara and Zara Johnson, thank you both for being here. It's been 6 months since the now famous airplane incident that revealed Amara as the owner of Skyline Airways. Zara, let's start with you. How has life changed since that day? Zara considered the question carefully. In some ways, everything has changed. My solar technology has received funding I never dreamed possible. I've had opportunities to speak at conferences and meet with industry leaders who are taking my ideas seriously. She paused, then added, but in other ways, nothing has changed. I still occasionally walk into rooms where people assume I don't belong. The difference is that now I recognize those assumptions for what they are, problems with their perception, not my presence. The host turned to Amara. And for you? You went from being a behind-the-scenes executive to one of the most visible CEOs in America virtually overnight. Was that transition planned? Not at all, Amara admitted with a laugh. For years, I believed effectiveness required invisibility. I thought I could change the system more easily from within if I didn't challenge its fundamental assumptions too directly. What changed your mind? The host asked. Watching my daughter face the same biases I had worked so hard to shield her from, Amara replied honestly. I realized that by hiding my success, I was inadvertently reinforcing the very system I claimed to be fighting against. True change requires visibility. People need to see what's possible in order to believe it's possible. The conversation continued, covering the business impact of Amara's revelation and the technical aspects of Zara's innovation. When they discussed the scholarship program, Zara took the lead. Education access is critically important, but it's not just about getting students through the door, she explained passionately. It's about creating environments where they can thrive once they're inside. That's why our scholarships include mentorship components and guaranteed internships. As the interview concluded, the host asked one final question: if you could speak directly to Nathan Reed today, what would you say to him? Mother and daughter exchanged glances, silently deciding who would answer. I'd thank him, Amara said finally, surprising the audience. Not for his behavior, which was inexcusable, but for providing such a clear demonstration of what we're fighting against. Sometimes it takes seeing bias in its most blatant form for people to recognize the subtle ways it manifests in their own lives. After the interview, as they left the studio, they encountered a group of young black girls waiting outside with their mothers. One small girl, no more than 10 years old, approached Zara with a solar-powered toy she had built herself. I made this after I saw you on TV, she explained proudly. My mom says I can be a scientist like you someday. Zara knelt to examine the toy, genuinely impressed by the child's ingenuity. This is really good engineering. You absolutely can be a scientist, probably even better than me. The girl beamed, then turned to Amara. And my mom says she's going to start her own business too, just like you did. Amara smiled at the girl's mother, who was watching the interaction with tears in her eyes. Tell your mom I believe in her completely. As they finally headed home, Zara reflected on the day. It's still surreal, you know. That one terrible moment on an airplane somehow turned into all of this. That's often how change happens, Amara replied. Not through grand strategies, but through ordinary moments when someone finally says, enough, and stands their ground. The next morning, they were scheduled to fly back to Atlanta on Skyline Airways. As they boarded the aircraft, there were no questions about their presence in first class, no assumptions about whether they belonged. The flight attendants greeted them professionally, and fellow passengers nodded in recognition. When they reached their seats, 2C and 2D, Amara smiled at the symmetry of returning to where their journey had begun. As the plane prepared for takeoff, she looked at her daughter, now confidently reviewing business proposals for her technology instead of nervously studying competition notes. You know, Amara said quietly, when I started Skyline Airways, I hoped to build something that would last beyond me, something that might create opportunities and change perspectives. I never imagined that process would begin with my daughter refusing to give up her seat. Zara smiled, understanding the deeper significance of what her mother was saying. Sometimes you have to sit firmly in your place before you can help others find theirs. As the aircraft lifted into the sky, mother and daughter sat side by side, no longer hiding who they were or the power they possessed. The flight attendant serving their section was new, having been hired during Skyline's recent expansion. She didn't immediately recognize Amara, approaching with the standard greeting. "Welcome aboard. May I get you anything before takeoff?" Another passenger, seeing the interaction, leaned over. "Do you know who that is?" "That's Amara Johnson. She owns this airline." The flight attendant's eyes widened in recognition. "Ms. Johnson. I'm so sorry, I didn't realize." "No apologies necessary," Amara interrupted with a warm smile. "I'm just another passenger today." But they all knew it wasn't true. She would never again be just another passenger, just as Zara would never again have to prove she belonged in her seat. They had claimed their space, and in doing so, had helped create space for others. As the plane reached cruising altitude, Zara looked out the window at the vast expanse of sky, thinking about the journey that had brought them here and the countless possibilities that still lay ahead. "Mom," she said thoughtfully, "do you think one moment really can change everything?" Amara considered the question, remembering how a single confrontation had transformed not just their lives, but an entire company culture and inspired countless others. "I think the right moment can," she replied. "When it exposes truths that were always there, waiting to be acknowledged. Change doesn't happen in a vacuum, it happens when someone decides to stand firm in their truth, even when it's uncomfortable." They flew onward toward Atlanta, toward home, toward futures neither could have imagined 6 months earlier. The confrontation that began with a white man attempting to take a black girl's seat had indeed changed everything, not because of the conflict itself, but because of how they had chosen to respond to it. In first class, in business, in technology, in life, they had claimed their rightful places. And they were never giving them up again. This story teaches us several powerful lessons about standing up against discrimination. First, silence often perpetuates injustice. When Amara stayed behind the scenes, she maintained her success but didn't challenge the system that created barriers for people like her and Zara. True change required visibility and courage to stand firm. Second, privilege thrives when unchallenged. Nathan Reed's behavior wasn't unusual, it represented the everyday assumptions many minorities face. What was unusual were the consequences, showing how accountability can transform individual behavior and institutional culture. Third, representation matters enormously. When Amara stepped into the light as Skyline's owner, she changed what people believed was possible, inspiring others to claim their own space. Fourth, standing your ground isn't selfish, it creates pathways for others. By refusing to give up her seat, Zara helped establish protocols protecting future passengers and inspired scholarship programs benefiting countless students. Finally, one moment of principled resistance can catalyze far-reaching change. What began as a simple conflict over an airplane seat transformed an entire company culture and touched thousands of lives. The most powerful act is sometimes simply refusing to move when told you don't belong. What moment in your life have you stood your ground against discrimination? Or when have you witnessed someone else do so? Comment below with your experiences. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful narratives about overcoming injustice. Share this video with someone who needs encouragement to claim their rightful place. Thank you for watching, and remember, your seat belongs to you. Never let anyone convince you otherwise.